welcome to Semgrep community. I'm Tanya, Janca, and I am your host today. I am part of the community team at Semgrep along with Amanda. And today, my guest is my awesome, amazing, incredibly successful, super brilliant friend, Jeevan Singh. Jeevan, can you say hi and introduce yourself?
That's wild. I don't know if I could beat that introduction. I
No,
think you
it's
might have
true.
inflated it a little bit. I'm just a regular guy. I'm Jeevan. I've been in the tech industry for a little over 20 years. So about 10 of it on the software development side, about 10 of it on the security side. Made that switch to security a decade ago, and I've never looked back. Literally day one, I was very nervous getting it onto the security side, but day one, I was just in love with our industry. Even before that, I started attending some security conferences. It was amazing. The people are great. They're very open, welcoming in itself, and yeah, and I love going to industry events so I can be open and welcoming to new people that want to join as well. So yeah, I'm at a company right now called Rippling. I run the product security team there, and we have about a team of 10 at the moment.
That is awesome. I really like Rippling. It allows me to work at Semgrep. And so, for those that, yeah, those that don't know, Rippling helps lots of Canadians be able to interact with lots of international entities so that we can kind of work anywhere we want. And in my books, two thumbs up.
Thank you. I didn't realize how big of an impact Rippling had until I started. So I started a week or two later was OWASP Global, AppSec Global in DC. And I went there like I do. I talked to the vendors, understand what's the new and upcoming categories of tools. And half of the folks there were using Rippling. So they told me a lot of great things, stories about how they interact with the tool.
It's actually okay, so like not to advertise Rippling the whole time. However, like I've gone through a bunch of other companies that do similar things and it was total hell on wheels. And it's actually quite a pleasure with Rippling. And so I'm going to stop talking about how they're great, but two thumbs up from this one person. Um, your journey into AppSec seems very similar to mine, like working as a dev and then joining the amazing community. And that's how you and I met, right? Because you run a wonderful community. Is there a chance? I know this is off topic. Could you like tell us about your community for a bit and how everyone
Yeah.
should join?
So I switched it to security, and about a year later, I found out about OWASP, and the Vancouver chapter had just started. And Farshad, he had rebooted the Vancouver chapter. I went to the first event. It was at the old Mozilla offices here in Vancouver. They talked about doing some offensive security testing through some scientific means, and it blew my mind. I was like, what is going on here? This is incredible, the research. So I asked Farshad, I'm like, hey, there were about 40 people that came to that particular event. I'm like, you're doing all the things. Did you need some help doing it? He's like, yes, I need help. So I didn't know what I was signing up for. I joined Farshad, and then it's been 8 years that we've sort of built up the community. A lovely community here in Vancouver. There's a good mix of people that are very senior and people that are just starting out. But like great talks on a monthly basis, people that have really deep knowledge. We had a great talk about eBPF the other month. December is when it's our downtime. We get together with all the other security organizations in Vancouver, and we do a holiday sort of event. So really calm one, and then we'll kick things off again in January as well.
I met both of you because I came to B-Sides Vancouver, and the two of you were like, "We're the OWASP chapter leaders. Do you want to have lunch?" I'm like, "There's literally no one else I want to meet more that lives in Vancouver because I am the biggest fan of OWASP. Love them so much." And so, yeah, you have a wonderful chapter.
Yeah, I'll love to claim all the credit, me and Fasha, but like it's the community. The community is so welcoming and giving. So they make everything happen. So it is such a great team and community.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more off-topic question, and then I swear, everyone, I'm going to get to the correct topics. You also work with other chapters to run a super cool conference. Did you want to briefly talk
Oh
about that?
man, you're definitely my hype person. Once a year, OWASP, Vancouver, Victoria, Portland, and Seattle, we get together and we put on a conference. So we did it virtually for a few years because of COVID. And then the first time we put it together was in Portland. Last year we did it in Vancouver. Semgrep came out and saved the day. So thank you for participating and doing workshops there. And next year we're going to be doing it in Seattle. So we're teaming up with the B-Side Seattle folks, and we'll be hosting our own portion there itself. So come out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully we have this same cool badges that can help you with wireless hacking as well. So definitely come out next year in Seattle.
Yes, come out to AppSec PNW, Pacific Northwest. And so I'm going to put a link in the show notes to that so that everyone can go check out the cool stuff and to your chapter. But okay, I swore that I would get back on track. Okay, so this whole thing is called burning down organizational risk. So I've seen you speak a few times. Every time I'm really a fan. And one of the things you said at Lost Global AppSec was you said our job is to burn down organizational risk every single day. And I was like, that's the best way to say what we do. I love it. Can you explain what that means to you?
Yeah, early in my career, I worked on teams that were kind of small, and we played a lot of whack-a-mole. We would notice an XSS issue, we fix that. We would notice another XSS issue, we'll fix that. And over again, we were just fixing these one-off issues, and we're not really thinking about the larger thing at play here. So, do we have an XSS issue? Do we have an injection issue? What's going on? Do we have a training issue? So it's really trying to discover what are the big problems within your organization and making sure that you chip away at it all the time. So one of the first things I do when I join an organization is I look at all the vulnerabilities that you have and try to see if there is a particular theme of vulnerabilities. So joining Rippling, our bug bounty program was just a very immature. So we focused a lot of effort on maturing it, and we noticed certain classes of vulnerabilities, and one of which was authorization issues. We presented that to our executive team as part of a QBR, a quarterly business review. And the executive team was like, yeah, this seems like a big issue. We want you to address it in the upcoming quarter. Getting the buy-in from the executive team really helped us be able to push on our engineering org and say, hey, this is a big deal. Our E-team, our CTO, your VP of engineering, so we have 5 of them, they all believe that this is a big deal, and we're going to be focusing on it. These are the 6 category of permission issues that we're seeing, and we're going to address every single one of those. And by the end of the quarter, we got all of those permission issues done. There were hundreds of folks that were working on things related to permissions. And we've seen a steep drop off as part of our bug bounty vulnerabilities when it comes to that. So, and like we're on the next one, we're working through the next major issue in our ecosystem. And we will leverage data that comes from our security tools, that come from our threat models, and that comes from our bug bounties to understand where is the risk and try to address it at a larger scale itself.
So authorization is an issue across the world that like every company, like if I don't know if you've read the OWASP API security top 10, but 4 of them are access control issues, right? It's just,
It's hard. It's a hard problem to solve. And the funny thing about AppSec, all the simple things are really hard to solve, and especially at scale. Like there's no simple solution to any of these sort of items.
not yet, but
Not yet.
maybe someday.
Yeah, I agreed. Like XSS, SQL injection was a huge thing when I started earlier in my career. that one, I don't even know where it would fall in the top 10. But obviously, it's very severe if it happens, but like it doesn't happen that frequently anymore. There's, yeah, framework level stuff. Same with XSS. Like that was everywhere all the time. I remember working at Segment for a couple of years. I think we literally only had a handful, less than 5 XSS vulnerabilities during my tenure there. So like we, as a industry, we are fixing full classes of vulnerabilities in themselves.
That is awesome. And something something I really like to see. I am very excited about the startup space and people creating new and innovative things, and not just we took this old thing and put AI in it, but like actually inventive, new, amazing things. And I feel like the future holds much better code. But for while I'm asking ginormous questions, I wanted to ask, according to Jeevan, what is the current state of application security? Because that is a thing that interests me a lot.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I would say that things are probably the best and the worst it's ever been. So I'm taking both of the extremes this time. It's the best that it's been because I've been chatting with a lot of small startups and they are already thinking about security. They might be a 10-person shop, but they're thinking about security. They might even be considering hiring a security person. Like chatting with one group and they're thinking about hiring a security person at 20 developers. And that, like, wow, that would never happen when we started. Typically, you have 100, 200 people before you even think about hiring a security person itself, if that. So I've had worked at challenging ratios in my past. So definitely the best. A lot more developers are aware about security issues as well. Senior people, senior staff and principal level, they know security issues and they are, it's easy to tune them into what I'm concerned with and how I would like to resolve things. More junior people are aware, but they still need a lot more practice to understand how to remediate these things. It's probably the worst it's ever been because um, unfortunately, the good guys are all aware, but also the bad guys are all aware about issues as well. And you continually see a lot of these breaches that are happening in the industry. So every week you hear about another one, and it is a challenge. As security engineers, we have to be right 100% of the time, whereas the adversaries only have to be right one time. So it's a challenge that way.
You remember having a goalie explain to the rest of the sports team I was on, y'all just need to get it right like once or twice. I have to get it right hundreds of times per games if you guys aren't doing a good job. Like that's a really good point, right? Because if the rest of the team isn't defending well, the goalie has to really pick up the slack. And it's sort of the same with AppSec teams. There is a question in the chat. And by the way, everyone that's listening live, you can ask questions in the chat for GVan. It doesn't only have to be Tanya's questions. Okay, so Amen asks, let's say you joined an org that doesn't have a bug bounty program or even an application security related, like any sort of AppSec related vulnerability data, what would be the first step which allows you to gain insight into understanding what the main risks are to that org? I am currently in this phase of supporting implementation of a secure system development lifecycle and an AppSec program from the ground up, and currently in the survey phase. I'm curious what approach you would take.
This is actually a fantastic question because I do that assessment every single company that I join. And now I'm finding myself, I do it every year at the company that I'm at as well. So first thing that I did when I joined Rippling was I spent the first 6 weeks sort of chatting with engineering leaders, security, just to better understand where security is, what things do we have in place, what things we don't have in place. And then I started creating a mental model of what exactly we need to tackle. I sat down and I created a year-long roadmap on the things that I needed to sort of address. So again, it's going to be very different from org to org. So one of the things first thing that I want to dive into was vulnerability management. We had a number of vulnerabilities in our ecosystem. Some were being fixed, some were not being fixed. And I want to understand what was going on. As I dug deeper into that, I realized we had severity inflation. We were calling everything critical and high in the hopes that engineering would actually fix things. And I really want to think that security is synonymous with trust. If we are doing that, we're losing trust with our engineers, and they're not going to, we're like crying wolf, and they're not going to really do anything if something really bad were to happen. So first thing we did, we cleaned up the vulnerability queue, made sure that there are only vulnerabilities. We defined what a vulnerability is. Sorry, I'm going to go off a bunch of tangents, but
It's great.
yeah. First tangent is that we defined what a vulnerability is, and we ensured that vulnerability is sort of like time capped at about 2 weeks worth of effort. We want to have anything that's larger, we want to call it a risk, and we'll put it in our risk queue, and we'll address it a different methodology. But vulnerability should be continuous and always addressing on the engineering side as well. So we created a severity standard for the different type of vulnerabilities that are coming in. We looked at all the vulnerabilities. We removed, there were tasks, risks, and larger vulnerabilities that we called risks. So we moved that off. And then we fixed all of the severity itself. First quarter, all the criticals were fixed. And second quarter, a bunch of the highs were fixed as well. So a lot of it happened organically in the organization because people started trusting the vulnerability management program. But we also work really closely with the VPs, the engineering leadership, and saying, okay, these are our SLAs. We want you to adhere to these SLAs. And that relationship has been great. So from the beginning of the year till now, we're down, I think, about 60% of total vulnerabilities in our ecosystem. So I want to, now one other tangent. So I want to leverage vulnerabilities because it's all about building security muscle. You want to be able to, if they haven't done much security work in the past, vulnerability is an easy thing to digest. They know that, hey, this is going to cause harm, and they can see how it could cause harm. So it's easy for them to remediate. As they build up that muscle, they can remediate more and more, and then slowly add more tooling that will push vulnerabilities into their ecosystem as well. So they continuously build more and more muscle to the point that now I think we should be addressing risks and these bigger, larger organizational issues. So we talked a little bit about the permission issues, authorization, but there are other risks that are related to their product or their pillar within the org that they can address as well. So, so long story long, let's start with doing some research, understand what are the root causes of the problems that you are seeing. For us, it was some security work being done, but not as much as I would anticipate as being a part of an org of this size. So slowly building up their capabilities. At the same time, working closely with your engineering leadership so that they understand what are these organizational risks that you're really wanting to address. So hopefully that sort of answers that question.
No, I really like this. A thing that I usually do when I go start, especially with consulting, is I need to see what the landscape looks like. And then I set goals for the program. And then I report on those goals. And often I find I'll join and their heads are down, they're working their buns off, but they're all deep in the weeds. And rather than addressing an entire vulnerability class, they're doing what you said, like whack-a-mole on one thing at a time. And when you look at the entire landscape and you're like, you know what, I think we can knock these two types of vulnerabilities out, or I think we could improve our patch management process so we could get fixes out way faster, or whatever the thing is, right? Like training so many different, or like this tool sucks, everyone, it makes everyone angry, so no one wants to use it. That means we need a new tool. Or sometimes you can fix the tool up and tune it and you just didn't implement it well. But the idea that you look at the big picture things, you make huge changes and everyone benefits, your team, like security team and dev team. Love that.
You mentioned two great things. One is like the metrics and dashboarding. People need to know where we are in that journey as well, especially the leadership side. So they want to know where, what percentage are we done? Are there blockers? How can they unblock folks as well? And the other part that you lightly touched on is that now I lost my train of thought. So, I will not address that until I actually remember what I'm going to be talking about. Yeah, but like you need those metrics and dashboards so that you can report back the progress to your engineering leadership. Otherwise, they don't know if they need to push harder on their team, or maybe they have good reasons why things are progressing slow, so that you can have that conversation of trading effort from here to focus on other parts as well.
Yes. Um, so a lot of our organization is not winning the battle with security because we're seeing in the news breach, 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 etc. And so there's a lot of challenges for our industry for achieving secure applications. If you were going to guess, what's what's stopping us? Like, is it culture? Is it technical issues? Like,
Yeah, that's a great and tough question as well. I would probably say it's a little bit of both. Um, usually, so companies typically start as startups. They don't have tons of hundreds of millions in funding initially. So they start small, and their initial goal is survival, and which makes more sense. It doesn't make sense that they focus all their effort on security right from the get-go. So they're surviving, they're trying to grow, and the security is not at the top of their mind there. So sometimes you have bad habits, you cut corners, it becomes an organizational norm. It's entrenched in there. And then when a security person comes in, it takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of work that you need to do to sort of remove that particular norm that you have in the organization. So from that side, yes, there's a cultural problem there. So the shortcuts that you take, maybe you allow all of your engineers to have access to production. And they've always had that. And they never have to worry about creating logs and actually looking through logs themselves. So you have to work really closely, build that logging culture. And that happened at a company a long time ago. We built that logging culture. And what we realized is way faster to go to the logs and look at things versus going into production. So you have to make it so that you incentivize people to want to do the right thing because it's better and easier and faster. So culturally, that's a challenge. But the technology side is a challenge as well. So I think we talked a little bit lightly about some classes of vulnerabilities being fixed by frameworks now. So a lot of new companies have been able to take advantage of that. So React is great, it reduces the amount of excess vulnerabilities. We have a lot of systems that provide you protection against SQL injection and CSRF. So a lot of these vulnerabilities you get out of the box where you have to build things before. But there are other types of vulnerabilities that are harder to address. So if there is an AI person listening out there, I would love for someone to figure out how to discover business logic vulnerabilities. Those are things that are really, really hard. I gained a lot of insight when working with bug bounties because humans find that a lot easier, but tools haven't gotten there yet. So there is a sort of like tooling gap or a sort of a technical gap where there are certain classes of vulnerabilities that have not been addressed that are still hard to remediate.
I write about that in my new book, how basically a lot of tools are really great at finding bugs, which is an implementation problem with your code. And they're not good at finding flaws, which is a problem with the way you've designed the application. And even if you absolutely perfectly implement a flawed design, you have a flawed product, right? And you can have a super great, awesome, amazing, beautiful design. And if you forget to put the security controls where they're supposed to go, again, you're going to have a bad day. But um, automated tools really shine with bugs, and they really don't shine with logic issues, which is why all my pen tester friends get paid so well
Yes.
because of their patience
Yeah.
and their perseverance.
It's a hard problem to solve. So I do think AI can help us in this area. And I do think like these big bug bounty companies, they have a lot of data that can potentially, they can use to help us build these tools. But that is a challenge and something that can slowly be addressed with training. If you train engineers and product management about these sort of problems, they will understand, and over time you can overcome them. But it is just a hard problem to solve just in general.
So that was something I was going to ask. So I'm super biased because I give secure coding training, right? Feels so again, I'm super biased. sorry. But like I feel like we're not really teaching these things in university, college, boot camps and stuff. Could that be part of the problem? And then like what can we do about that?
Yeah, I think we're getting better at universities. Being local to Vancouver, I get an opportunity to talk to folks that go to Simon Fraser University, SFU. They have a great instructor there, Mohammed, that always reaches out to folks in the industry and gets to talk to his students. So I get to talk to them about threat modeling and how it works, and we go through small exercise there and get them really jazzed up about threat modeling. But like you're right that there's no formal like everyone you have to go through this before you get your stamp of approval from being a developer itself. So and we talked a little bit earlier about senior staff and principal level folks. They understand at that point, but those junior and intermediate folks are still learning what security is, what's important about security. Having said that, I did sit in certain meetings with the junior folks, and they still have a lot to contribute. So I remember the first time that I sat in threat modeling at Segment. So I started, and this fresh new individual, Andy, started first day on a job, and we sat in a threat model, and we went through it. I knew all the risks that I was really concerned about. And as part of threat model, I feel it's really important to ask everyone their opinion. I want everyone to contribute because they see things a lot differently. So I have my horse blinders on. I only think the way I think, but people think differently. So I reached out to Andy and asked him, hey, do you have any particular concerns here? And he brought out something. I had thought about it, but I had dismissed it because of prior history biases that I had. But when I thought about it again, after Andy said it, I realized, oh my God, he is right. I should have considered that more deeply. So a lot more junior folks have a lot to contribute. They see the world differently. And yeah, they should be a part of your organization when you are delivering these threat models.
Absolutely agree. I also think that that's part of diversity. And
Yes.
so a lot of people think of diversity, they think of we need to have people with different color skin tones. And I'm like, I do want to see everyone represented, but I also want junior people, senior people, old people, young people, people that took a super formal computer science degree, and also people with like a music background. Like
Yes.
by having all of these different experiences, you end up with way, way better threat models.
Way better. You get a lot more risks. Uh, as part of my threat modeling training, you always start with showing a house and how would you secure the house. And everyone's background is very different. And their experiences are so different. So you get to hear a huge gauntlet of risks there. And if we listen to everyone's opinion, we'd secure it in a great way. So one of my Spanish friends is like, hey, there's no bars on the bottom layer windows. Why isn't there any bars? And I remember traveling to India and going to family's home. They would have these large walls with broken glass at the top of it. So
Yeah.
very scary.
In Venezuela, they have that everywhere. Like the top of the cement, they just smash the glass right into it. I'm like, I'm not messing with that. No.
Yeah, yeah. So having like different genders, different races, different experiences is really important as part of the threat model. You'll get a much more robust threat model itself, and you will list out your big risks, things that you have to address, and there'll be other stuff that you will address over time as well.
In the chat, we have a super great comment from Amen. In my La La dream world, if a tool could somehow threat model on its own, perhaps using AI, then I think maybe that would be possible. I love that idea of including the AI's opinion too, because imagine the things that we'll come up with.
Very true. There are actually companies in this space. So there are a few that I've been chatting with. I'm very excited about that. As time goes on, as these tools get stronger, it'll make it a lot easier to help scale some of these programs.
So, what are some strategies for burning down organizational risk?
Yeah. We talked a little bit at the very beginning is first identifying a risk. stop playing whack-a-mole, look at the data that you're getting, aggregate it, deeply understand it, and try understand the root cause for those particular issues. So making sure that you are filling up your risk register, not only at the very entire organization, but also the smaller, if you have 5 products, make sure that all 5 of those products have their risks associated with it. So I would say that's the easy part of actually bringing down. But the harder part is making sure that you have your executive team bought into security as well. So what I've done in the past is that I make sure that I only join organizations that really care about security. So it's way harder to make someone care about security after the fact than if they have inherently built in that concern. And so I was very lucky joining Rippling. I've worked with our CTO in the past. I know he's very passionate and caring about security and all of the foundational themes like SRE, observability, all these sort of things. And got to know a lot more about our CEO, Parker. He is also very, very concerned with security. So it makes things really easy at the organizational standpoint. If you have your list of security concerns, present them in a way that you're not crying wolf and saying, hey, the world is falling down, being very real, being able to speak in the executive voice as well. And so if you have executives that are business heavy, maybe you talk about risks with a financial impact. What is going to be the cost of not addressing this risk, or the potential costs of not addressing this risk? If they are more of a product background, talk about how the impact will be to customers. So be able to talk in the language that they need to understand. Don't talk in technical terms. No one at that level wants to hear on the technical side of things. Talk in their language, influence them how they need to see influence. Then it makes a lot easier for them to buy in and really help support your goals themselves.
So when I joined security, I had to work a lot on my soft skills and my communication skills. And I remember going into a room with a whole bunch of directors, and I was like, this is really important. We need to fix it. And they're like, why? I'm like, because security, which is the worst answer ever. And it was my first security job. I didn't have all the words and vocabulary and things like that. And so I had to learn a lot of persuasion skills, a lot of negotiation skills, change my language a lot, learn how to speak to different audiences. And so you have a bunch of sayings that I've really picked up on in when you talk about things, which is part of why I like watching you speak. And so your expression, burning down organizational risk, and another one you have, democratizing security, you find that so when you come up with, I don't know what to call it, like a motto or an expression or just like a way where everyone knows what you mean, because those are new terms for me. How did you come up with these, and how powerful do you find them to be, or useful?
Yeah, I don't know if I came up with them or if I stole them from people that I've worked with. So, yeah, but we use those terms quite a bit. So, democratizing security is huge for us, and we did a lot of that starting in the segment. So, Colleen Coolidge, Eric Ellett, there's a bunch of folks that were the way we flipped the way that we're thinking about security itself. Security is not a security team's problem. If we just only had a centralized security team and we're supposed to do all the things, nothing will get done. So it's really about organizational, aligning them and getting things done as well. So one of the biggest programs that have been successful for us in my career was democratized vulnerability management, where Eric came up with a workflow. Traditionally, we always chase engineers. Hey, your vulnerability is over SLA. Please either fix it or give us a reason and we can extend the SLA for it. And Eric's like, this costs a lot of time. We're wasting a lot of time that we can be better used doing other things and burning cost of dev vulnerabilities down. Let's make this an engineering team problem. They are responsible for it and they have to do it. And so what he did is he set up a workflow where lows and informational, if you need to extend the SLA, the engineering manager will go through the workflow and it gets auto extended, because they have enough authority, autonomy and authority on their roadmap to say that we can push this later itself. The mediums went to directors, the highs went to VPs, and segment was a little bit smaller. So the criticals actually went to the CEO. We did a pen test, infrastructure pen test one time, and there was a critical finding. It's going to take more than the 2-day SLA that we had for criticals. So we had to sit down the CEO, got time in his calendar, talked about the vulnerability, talked about the remediation plan that the engineering team came up with. It'll take a couple of months because it's going to re-architect a lot of things. And he had to sign off on that. So he logged into Jira, accepted the SLA extension, and they had that 2 months of dealing with it. And what we learned is when you bubble up risk to the right owners, it would cause them to, they would actually understand what's going on in their organization. So traditionally, if security is always chasing you to do critical and high vulnerabilities, the VPs are not really knowing how much security technical debt that they own. So another situation happened in a segment where this one particular team, they had a high vulnerability, they had extended it, and they looked for another extension. And the VP was like, wait, if anything goes wrong, the whole company is going to blame me because I'm the one that's accepting these extensions. So before I extend it, I need to know who's going to work on it, how long it's going to take, and what is the actual plan. So I want to vet the plan itself. And so they got all that information, said it's going to take them 5 weeks to do. They got it done in a week and a half because there was no way they were going to go back to that VP for asking for another extension. So by democratizing our vulnerability management program, we're able to get the right level of individuals involved, show the data and the metrics that they need to know to understand how much risk that they have inherited, and work with them to sort of reduce that risk within their organization. So work great at Segment, work fantastically at Twilio. It's doing great here at Rippling as well.
I found when I first started in AppSec, I worked at a bunch of places where they're like, oh, it's the security team's fault if this is insecure, but then I wouldn't have the authority to force them to fix things.
Yes.
And so I came up with this completely made up thing that I call the risk sign-off sheet. And I just sent it to like the very high up executives. And I'm like, I need you to sign off on this risk.
Yes.
These 6 risks that were just, I can't sleep at night level risks. Like I was very upset about them. And they're like, one of them called me, he's like, I'm not signing this. This is terrible. And I'm like, well, as the CISO, you haven't given me the authority over these teams because you've put me at the same, because even though I had a C in my title, I was not a C. I was not a real C. So they had me at the same level as the engineering managers. And the engineering managers are like, go away. Well, some of them were and some of them weren't. And so he's like, you tell them Bill sent you. And to do it, or come talk to me and explain why not. And people were like, Bill said it. And he's like, they ran away and like they fixed everything. And he's like, that was a dirty trick, Janca. And I'm like, was it? Right? Like, because and I remember he's like, well, I'm not going to sign it. So then I didn't accept the risk. I'm like, you know about it by doing nothing. I've showed this to you in rating. By doing nothing, you have essentially accepted the risk, right?
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, you're too smart. I should have hired someone dumber. And so I feel you so much. And I love the way that you did that. Was that hard to get people to agree to? Or
yeah, so I didn't do it. Like Eric did it. So Eric set it up, and then Ariel set it up. I see the chat. Ariel set it up at Twilio, and the buy-in was a lot easier than we expected because it reduced the amount of friction that we had between security and engineering because we're always chasing them. Now we don't have to chase them. It's a self-service process. And the thing that we like, while we care about some individual vulnerabilities, we care a lot more about the aggregate and how much technical debt we're accruing over time itself. So our goal through that whole system was better understanding which teams are not addressing any security risks, and then working with them to understand why and potentially burning down risk there. And then looking at the overall ecosystem and understanding how much we're accruing over time and coming up with strategies at the organizational level addressing things. So that's worked fantastically here at Rippling as well, where now we're talking to VPs on a quarterly basis, talking about their vulnerability, the vulnerability metrics, amount of technical debt they're accruing, but also their very specific risks that they own, and understanding how do we get that onto their roadmap and actually address these particular risks. So it's leading to the conversations that security people need to have to really move the program forward. Yeah, it's been fantastic that way. So democratizing that. We also democratized our threat modeling program as well at Segment. So it was easier at Segment. Segment only had maybe 150, 200 engineers at the time. But one of the things that we noticed, so one thing was that we're chasing people with vulnerabilities, so we wanted to democratize that. The second thing is that we were involved with a lot of threat modeling, security review type of scenarios. And that was taking a lot of our security time itself. And Colleen's like, can we democratize this? Can we get engineering to do it? And me being naive, I'm like, yeah, we should be able to do that. So yeah, why not? So I sat down and sort of figured out, how did I learn about threat modeling? How did I get better at threat modeling? And it was through training, but a lot of it was on the job doing things with it. So we came up with a program where first we trained engineers how to threat model. Then we watched them threat model. So we were in the room and we would not provide any guidance until unless we think that they're missing some critical and high vulnerabilities. In those scenarios, we wouldn't tell them, hey, you missed this. We're like, hey, have you considered authentication between these points? What would you consider as a risk there? So we want them to think about it. We're trying to coach them to think about these sort of things itself. And it led to us getting much more robust threat models, because first, we realized we're not good at threat modeling their features as they are. They're way better at threat modeling their own features than we are. So they would get much, much deeper. We are at the superficial level. I would learn about their feature, read about it for 2 hours, and I have to tell them all of the things, which I don't know all of the things. So training them a little bit and getting them to understand what we care about, they were able to go much deeper. They're in their code for quarters, years, so they know what's going on. And so much better threat models. And our culture went through the roof. It was amazing how they started caring a lot more about security, because they understand what we cared about when it comes to security. So my favorite story there is that we were a Golang Node shop at Segment on the server side, and Node dropped high vulnerability remediation. So they had a patch for it. And most of our security folks at Segment at the time were on the West Coast. So East Coast engineering manager noticed it, discovered that there are 3 vulnerabilities in the ecosystem. He patched his, and then he let the other 2 engineering managers know. This all happened before any of us got up. So I had a message in my Slack when I got up. He's like, hey, this is what's happening. By the end of the day, it'll all be remediated. It helped really shift the culture and the narrative within the organization when engineering understood what is important, why it's important itself.
That is incredible. I love that story so much. Hey, that's amazing. We have so many awesome comments and questions in the chat. So Marissa says, my favorite talk ever is from B-Side San Francisco 2024, 6 years in review, transforming company culture to embrace risk, by Ariel Shin, someone we both really, really like. So if you are listening, you should check that out, and I'll include it in the show link. So if you're watching this later, it'll be down in the description. Ariel rules, by the way. You should totally check her out. If you like me and Jeevan, you'll also really like her. So that same person, Marissa, says, what are some indicators that an org really does care about security that you could ask about during a job interview? So this is actually, because they'll all tell you, like, we take security seriously, but a lot of them don't. How can we kind of root out the truth?
That's a great question. I typically do a lot more, like I don't even get to the interview phase before I start vetting security company, or it's like companies themselves. One of the things, one of the best lessons I learned early in my security career was that Ben, my first security VP, he's like, Jeevan, I could only take you so much in your journey. He had a cloud network security background. He's like, you're going to have to reach out and build your own network of app sec folks themselves. So that's been something that I've been doing for the past 10 years. And I've gained enough of a strong network that before I even think about applying for a role or a job, I already know people at that organization and I know how they feel about the security, what the challenges are. So even though I knew people here at Rippling, I had been chatting with them for some time. I understood the people, engineering leadership, their thoughts about security. I knew Duncan, the CISO. I chatted with him a few times. And you, Pablo and Eric had also joined, who I've worked with in the past. So I had very well vetted that. And then through the interview process, I really grilled the CTO. He was part of it. And fortunately, I've worked with Albert in the past, so he didn't mind me grilling him. And I really asked him deeply about very on the technical risk side as well. So how do you think about these particular risks? And I knew that they were earlier on in their journey. So I asked him more about how do you think about ownership in these particular areas? How does this happen? And really drove deep on very specific vulnerabilities or a risk scenario. Anti-design patterns were probably the best way to describe them for someone that's early stage. And he had great answers for that. He's like, yeah, we're doing terribly at this right now, but this is our plan over the next 2-3 years on how to address it. So it really showed me the maturity level at which I already knew about Albert. But it helped me know that, yeah, he knows that these are the problems. He knows that he has a plan, but he also shared with me that we will get to it. There are other organizational things that we have to work on before getting to it. One other shout out for Albert. When Albert joined, we were on an earlier version of Django framework at we're Django shop at Rippling. And he's like, this is not good enough. We need to be on the latest version, and it has to be well supported by Django. And everyone's like, no, that's impossible. There's no way for us to do it. It's going to break so many things that we are going to do it. I made it very clear to the organization. And by the time I joined, they were already on the latest supported version because he takes that sort of stuff very, very seriously in itself. So all these things were great signals for me. So I think the best answer and solution to it is before you even apply, really understand which companies actually really care about security. The Netflixes, the Ripplings, the Snowflakes of the world, there are so many of these there's a lot of these companies. Understand who really cares about security, understand their leaderships, and go join work with great people. Reduce your stress that way.
It's true. That's why I wanted to join Microsoft so badly. I'm like, they're completely obsessed with security. This is great. Instead of me being like a salmon swimming upstream every single day, like I'm swimming with everyone. It's amazing. Okay, so there's so many questions in the chat and it's hard to choose from because all of them are good. But Timothy asks if you could give one or two key actionable items or recommendations that we could use to try to push towards a more generative culture and positive culture around security, what would those potentially be?
Yeah, I think the first thing that security folks need to do when joining organization is developing street cred. You have to be people that they want to depend and trust you itself. So, and it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to really hammer security home right away. One of the things that you can do is really give trainings, give good, fun, interactive trainings, get people to know who you are as an individual, and they will come reach out to you. So some of the trainings that we've given in our past were think like attacker. So a fun little thing. We learned about the top 5 vulnerabilities that we had at the company, and we show people how do attackers attack these particular ones. So people got to open up Burp. Some people use Firefox, but we show them different ways that people with attack mindset will attack our application. And then right after that, we're like, okay, here's secure code review. This is how these 5 that they were able to attack, this is how you prevent them. And this is what you need to look for as part of it. And these were interactive sessions. So we would show code, say, okay, we're looking for access vulnerabilities, or we're looking for sensitive information that we're logging. So we would ask these sort of questions, make it really interactive, make sure everyone's engaged, and make it fun. So when it was fun, we built that culture up so people were not afraid to start reaching out to you on cultural side. And then we talked a little bit about democratization as well. Like, we are adults. We're all adults in a company. Treat people as adults. So sometimes these engineering teams can't get to fixing vulnerabilities because for whatever reason, maybe they are working on a new product. Maybe they are addressing other technical debt, not security, but overall organizational technical debt. Treat everyone as adult, show people, okay, we're concerned with this, and work with them, have a plan, but like really work with people, be collaborative themselves. And once people understand who you are by your nature, by democratizing things, by training and the collaboration, they'll naturally want to work with you in itself.
I want to add something onto that. So if you're listening and you're like, wow, public speaking, that sounds more interesting to me. It's not as scary as you think. When I first gave my first um, training was just like Jeevan. It was, oh gosh, I'm so concerned about these security things. I'm going to have to give a presentation. I would I would kind of rather maim myself, but I got to do it. And I was so nervous and I was so worried. It was so terrible. And everyone's like, oh, okay, I guess we'll do that. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't die. And so you might be thinking, oh, like Jeevan and Tanya, they speak at conferences all the time, blah, blah, blah. I sucked when I started. I sucked so bad, and it's totally okay. You don't have to be perfect. What you have to do is just show them what you really care about. And that's like, listen to the way Jeevan talks. He clearly, obviously, really cares. And then that's the thing that connects with them. Do you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, um, passion is infectious. So once you are very passionate, people do get infected. And I know that Marissa is asking a lot of questions. She gave me my favorite hint ever when it came to actually security stuff. She told me that the best way to scale is to talk to people one-on-one. So I'm like, that doesn't make sense. If you're talking to people one-on-one, how are you going to be scaling? But it was fantastic because it's that passion, you're infecting these people with it, they'll infect other people with that passion as well. So the more people that I talk to one-on-one, they understand who I am, they understand what I'm after, and they started doing a lot of those things. So a great hint from Marissa as well.
So Mikhail mentions just like tweet code snippets with, and then say like find a vulnerability in this. That'd be another way to get interaction. And Amin says, I love the idea of thinking like a hacker. Do I have permission to steal that idea? Does everyone have permission?
Please, yeah, but don't hack things that you're not allowed to hack. You didn't get that from me. Yeah.
Okay, so I am supposed to wrap up now, and I'm very bad at saying goodbye. I'm wondering, so I have two questions. So, first question, if there was a key takeaway that you wish everyone listening would would remember and do, what would it be?
Yeah. Oh, that one's a good one. For me personally, it is spend that time. So a lot of us folks on the security engineering, we aim for action. So we want to fix things. We want to do it right now. Spend time, sit down with their engineers, spend time with their engineering leadership, understand what they care about, what their problems are, and then formulate a plan and formulate a longer term year, 2 year roadmap, and then slowly start knocking things off that list. So first one is like spend time, build a strategy, and focus on your strategy. And the other one is going back to being collaborative. So build your street cred, work closely with engineers, make sure that they know that you're not there to stop what they're doing. You're helping them achieve their successes as well. That you rather spend some time with them at the very beginning before they even write a single line of code and talk about controls rather than after the fact. And we find architectural flaw will take months to address. So be collaborative, make sure that you're working really closely with your engineering folks, and make sure that they understand that you actually care about their success as well.
I love that. And so I suspect that everyone watching is like me and we're like, oh my gosh, where can I get more Jeevan? So how can we connect with you, follow you, figure out places you're going to speak? What are our options?
Yeah, LinkedIn is good. I'm always on LinkedIn commenting on random posts and all that. I will be at B-Side Seattle. We're doing the AppSec PNW part of it there. So definitely you'll see me there. You'll catch me at B-Sides SF. It's one of my favorite conferences just in general. And then likely I'll be at Hackers Summer Camp this year as well. So those are a few places. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I don't mind asking questions. Go back to something earlier we talked about, is that the community was so giving to me when I was learning. I want to give back and build the next generation of leaders.
I love this. And if you're in Vancouver, go to
Yes.
Vancouver OWASP.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to steal Marissa's wonderful comment to thank you. She said, and I agree, thank you, Jeevan, for the tips on stress reduction, street cred, and democratizing security. Clap, clap, hats off to you.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I learned a lot of things in my career, some from my mistakes, but a lot from the people that I work with. So hats off to everyone that I've stolen ideas from.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of Semgrep community. Like, you are a person in demand, and I appreciate you making time for us. Thank you, Jeevan Singh.
It's always been a pleasure. I always love our chat, Tanya.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we will see you next time. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day, and if it's really cold, I hope that you are warm. With that, bye.